Here we see the beautiful sunrise. Well, hello there. BizTax here, bringing you another episode of Agrarian Skies 2. And apparently this tree only has one apple on it. So, yeah. That's fun. So it's going to be used for wood. And maybe to make another tree. Another apple tree. Yep. Yeah, so in this episode, I'm going to be ranting on about the issues with space. This has been brought on because my dad is currently reading a book about the issues with space.
Packing for Mars.
Yes, packing for Mars. So, thought that it would be fitting, and he's been telling me bunch of the shit that's written in the book, and like some interesting parts and some interesting things that have been brought up, like for instance, the way that a fuse works is oh my god, I had all the oak saplings in there. Okay, anyway, the way that a fuse works is you have a piece of metal that is designed to melt once enough current goes through it. So that way, as soon as it gets too much juice, then it just breaks the circuit and it stops. The only problem is that in 0 G's, the metal will melt, but without any gravity to pull the molten metal away from the contacts, it just stays in place until the metal boils, by which time your electronics are already fried. And and it's just like there's things like that you don't really think about when you're talking about going into space and stuff like that. Like what happens to your organs. Gravity is really good for our body. It's really good for our body. It keeps all of our organs where they're supposed to be. So without it, they all just kind of merge up into your chest cavity.
Yeah, float around.
They float around. And that is no bueno. Also, your sense of balance and direction is 100% totally wrecked when you're in microgravity or zero gravity. Due to the fact that there's little crystals in your ears that handle they act like accelerometers, telling you which way is down. And in space, those crystals are just kind of free floating. They're in a neutral position. So as soon as you move your head, those crystals sling to the sides of your inner ear, which tells you that you're laying down and standing up, then laying down and standing up, then laying down and standing up in rapid succession, and your brain just has no idea what the hell is going on, and you puke. Also, anyone who's played Space Engineers would also understand this concept, where as you are working on something, like in space, you have to reposition yourself, right? And that can and so you have a mental picture of what way is up, and if you don't have, and so if you're just kind of repositioning yourself idly in the middle of trying to work on something, then you'll end up you'll just end up like repositioning, and you'll reposition yourself, and you'll just look around the room, and the room's upside down. And it just kind of really fucks with your brain. And you puke. Or you're going through the space station, and you see one of your buddies floating by upside down. Your brain doesn't know what the fuck to do, and you puke. You know, and these are small little things that you really take for granted. And, you know, like welding in space. There's a reason why NASA doesn't like welding. That's why whenever anyone does anything in space, they use nuts and bolts. Because let's say you're inside the cabin and you're trying to weld, right? You're in a heavily oxygenated area with
Fire.
fire with fire.
Fire in space, no bueno.
Yeah, fire in space is not good.
Oh, that's nice, hanging out.
And
Started working on that
you know, it's just
video.
that,
Gonna get it all cleaned out.
like, you obviously in space that the only way that you'd want to actually weld is if you're using electro welding, like arc welding or like TIG welding or whatever. So if you're inside, then you need to have you know, like the TIG welding setup and the argon gas, which is more stuff that you need to bring up into space while you're working on things, and that's not good. If you're outside of the cabin,
Yeah, I'm working on it.
and you're actually in space, then welding is actually vastly easier in the sense that you don't have to worry about your flux, because there's no oxygen, there's no air in space, so you don't have to worry about oxygen contaminating the weld. And I would assume that welds in space are actually way stronger than welds on Earth. But there's another caveat to that, is that the way that welding works is you melt a bit of metal, you melt another bit of metal, and you put those molten bits of metal together, and then when it solidifies, you have one piece of metal. So when you're welding, it creates a lot of heat, and that heat can create, you know, things to expand. But if there's no air, there's no water, then there's no popping, which is good. But if a bit of molten metal pops off of what you're working on and like hits your suit, then you're screwed, unless you're in like a hard suit or something. But there's another caveat to welding, is that it uses heat, and in space it takes a long time for things to cool down, because there's no air to drive the heat away. There's no gas to drive the heat away. So you'd either want to use an inert gas like argon or nitrogen in order to blast the weld afterwards in order to dissipate the heat. Or you just have to sit back for a long time and wait for just radiation to take over and radiate all the heat away. And that's also not that great. Really, if you want to put welds in space, you weld on Earth and then you put it into space. That's really the only way that you can really do welding in space. Other kinds of issues that arise when going into space, not even just how you're going to get the fuel up there, or how long it's going to take for the mission to, you know, do its thing, or anything like that. There's a lot more issues than just that. Like, again, fuses, they don't work. You have to use circuit breakers, which work perfectly fine in space because they work on an entirely different principle. And there's also, like, pooping is another thing that's an issue, because gravity helps us poop, and without gravity it's hard to poop. You know, that's a thing. Like, how do you eat in space? Like, how do you keep track of your stuff in space? Like, in space, you just let go of something for a moment, you're not seeing it ever again. Yeah, it's gone. like in this book, there's this astronaut saying that they lost a sharps container. Like that's mind-boggling to me. Like, how do you lose a sharps container? That's like impossible. They're designed to not be lost ever. But in space you can just randomly lose a sharps container. So you can lose things very easily, and they try and mitigate that by using like Velcro or magnets. You have to like tie everything down or stick things to other stuff. Not to mention, when you do lose something, you like on Earth, you only have like so many places that something can be. Because you have finite spaces for where everything can go, and in space, even though it's still finite, it's a lot more places that things can hide. Because whenever we lose our keys, we don't look on the ceiling. In space, if you lost your keys, you'd have to look everywhere, including the ceiling, and behind the light fixtures, and it's no bueno. So, there's that. Eating and drinking in space is kind of a pain, but we've pretty much solved that by now. Writing in space is a bit of a pain. That's why we made the space pen. Even though you can just, simply use a pencil. It's a lot easier, it's a lot cheaper. And you can erase it. But graphite dust can become an issue, and there's other reasons why using a pencil in space isn't the best idea. It's not a bad one, but it's not necessarily the best one. So there's that. What do I have here? I have a boatload of that stuff. Okay, cool. Kind of want to bust this down to dust. Okay, basic planter. I could get a stone planter and do some things. Yeah, let's look into like some of the. Let me sky block. Oh, Wards aluminum or tools. Manual detect. Flint axite. I've already done that. Bollocks. Mob hunter. Punji sticks. Mystical blood. Bees and trees. And applied engineering. I need skystone block. Okay. So I guess what I'm going to need to do is I want to do the sky farm because food is going to be an issue, especially once I've run out of bone meal. Because I'm not going to cheat myself any more bone meal. I also want to upgrade this to another thing, which means that I might want to actually give myself another one of these, and then so I mean, being in space is a bit of a hassle, and we have figured out a lot of the caveats to space travel and space missions and things of that nature, but we still have a ways to go before we fully figured it out. And in either way, it's still an issue. It's a dangerous place. There's not only just cosmic radiation, but solar radiation, and just if anything happens to your suit while you're on a spacewalk, then you're pretty much screwed. A lot of things can go wrong. A lot of things can go really right as well. But that's not going to happen. So, space is dangerous. Space is cool. There's a lot of cool things in space. There's a lot of cool things you can do in space. And there's a lot of things that just don't necessarily work in space. Gravity is a very powerful tool that we take for granted and we don't realize just how important it is for such mundane tasks as walking. You know, it's definitely one of these interesting things. But, you know, it's cool to be in space, I would assume, I would hope. Just as long as you don't puke. Because apparently that happens a lot. But what about Skystone? Skystone dust. Grindstone. Pulverizer. Yeah. Blaze powder. Okay. Some redstone. Powdered iron ore. Powdered aluminum ore. Okay, cool. I mean, I'd love to go into space. That'd be something that I would think would be a really cool thing to do. Oh, I just realized something. I'm gonna do this properly. I'm gonna need to. I think if I just do 164 stack of just a 64. If I do one stack of sand, I think, like if I sift through one stack of dust, I think that should be good enough. I'm a little hungry. Nom 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 nom. But you know, like there's, like welding just doesn't. It's not good. You know, it's just kind of interesting to see what problems there are in, like, with space flight and flight in general. Flight's hard, and just, you know, figuring out these problems and solving the problems. There's been a lot of work in the field of just getting us into space and keeping us in space without us, you know, dying. And it's, I don't know, like, getting us to Mars is going to be one hell of a ride. And we've already pretty much started it. We've pretty much already started the whole trek, the whole planning phase, figuring stuff out phase, all that stuff. But we still have a long ways to go before we can even think to begin to actually get us there. There's a lot of things that can go wrong too. And that's one of the things that I don't really like about a lot of the going to Mars movies and shows and stuff depicting us going to Mars, is that a lot of them are, there's a lot of things that don't really make that much sense. Like, for instance, with The Martian and the National Geographic series Mars, they only send one mission, and it's a long trip. I mean, I understand that the more rockets you send up, the more expensive it's going to be, but also the higher your chances of success are. Even if it's just two, even if all you're sending is two, you know, is just like two rockets, that still drastically increases your chances for success, diminishing your chances of failure, because with that, then if something goes wrong, and trust me, something will go wrong, then you can mitigate the badness of it going wrong if you have more rockets, more people, and more groups, more accurately. So it would actually be a lot better if you sent, say, maybe not necessarily sending, doing several launches, maybe like 2 launches, and then doing like, and then from that you would do, and then like each launch would have multiple missions on board. Like, so you send up two launches, and each launch holds, like, say three groups. You're sending up basically 6 individual groups that would all be landing independently of each other, and if anything happens to one group, then the other groups can come in and help out. So you drastically increase your chances of success. And having a modular base and having multiple modular bases would also help to diminish the chances of catastrophic failure. If you want to be serious about colonizing a foreign place, you basically have to go all in. It's really just all or nothing with colonization of any form, either space or even, here on Earth. If you really want to do it, you have to, do it. And that's the one thing that I don't really see in a lot of these shows is a lot of that happening. It's really all just, there's a lot of just there's not enough redundancies. I'm guessing that I'm trying to say is that there's simply not enough redundancies. And redundancies are good because, like I said, if something goes wrong, then you have something else to help you out. So let's go down to applied engineering. Oh, Skystone. Skystone block. Wait, what about Skystone? Wait, what? Before you can get started in applied energies, you will need Skystone. In order to get Skystone, make a stone barrel, fill it with lava, and right-click the barrel with Skystone dust. Okay, so I need to get a stone barrel. So, that's one issue that I see in a lot of these Mars guys, Mars things, that they don't do enough. There's not enough redundancies, and in all of them you notice that something goes terribly wrong and no one's there to back them up, and it's just all bad. And that's why you have redundancies, because without redundancies then you have no safety net, and that's just not a good thing to be up shit creek without a paddle, so to speak. You know, I think that's enough stone. Okay, there we go. Hey, keyboard, stop it. Thank you. Let's see. I'm gonna need all of it to go in anyway. So, yeah, there's just not enough stuff going on with a lot of these going to Mars movies and shows and things of that nature, in my opinion. That's just what I think. How much of it is actually correct, you can't really say one way or the other. I'm actually just going to drop all of these guys off here. And then, wow, hey. There we go, that's a little bit better. So I need the sky stone. And I'm gonna just grab all of the gravel. Then wow, this is obnoxious. Alright. Oh. Yeah. So, this video has gone on long enough. I'm gonna end it here. And yeah, I hope to see you guys next time. Ciao.